Hey guys, today is day 10, so that means we are in Matthew chapter 10. And we start out with knowing the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles. We get their names, but notice the very first verse. It's something that is important even to us today. He called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits. Those who he calls, he also equips. It's so important. So important for us today, even for these disciples. He called his disciples to do his work the same as he calls us to continue his work. So if he calls you to be a Christian, God will equip you through the Spirit to do with what he wants. And so he calls his 12 disciples. We get to see their names. We know who they are. And then immediately after he calls them, what happens? He sends them out, right? And notice in verse 5, it says he's instructing them. That's an interesting word in the Greek. It means a military command. He's almost giving them orders that they would go out and to tell others about Jesus. Remember, up until this point, Jesus has been traveling around Galilee doing all the ministering. Now, he's sending 12 others. So now there's 13 people going all throughout Galilee talking about God and who Jesus is and heaven and what that means for them. But notice it goes on in verse 5 into 6. He tells them, go nowhere among the Gentiles or enter the town of Samaritans. Jesus came for the whole world, but he came for Israel first. He came for the Jews first. But notice in verse 6, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now this is interesting and takes us all the way back to John the Baptist. Remember, Israelites, Jewish people, do not believe to think that they are lost. They know the right God. They have the genealogy, the racial recognition that they believe that they get to go to heaven. So here Jesus is saying, go to Israel who is lost. All of Israel is lost. It's not just, you don't get to get on the bus that goes to heaven just because your great-great-great-granddaddy is Abraham. There has to be something more. The same as John the Baptist. Turn and repent, right? You're going about it the wrong way. Following the laws of the Old Covenant, of the Old Testament, is not enough. There has to be something more. This is interesting that Jesus starts out with Israel, and he even refers to them as being lost sheep. But notice as we keep reading in verse 14, he says, if they don't receive you, if they don't listen to you, if they don't like the message, if they don't like the gospel, you notice he says, don't just stand there and take it and beg them. What does he do? Shake off the dust from your feet and leave that house or town. And it's just the simple idea, right? We're not called to beg and to scream and to convert every person. We're called to share the gospel. That's all we can do. We share the gospel, we move on. If you were to spend your whole lifetime on converting that one person who says no, how many people did not hear the gospel because you just stayed and argued and talked over a gospel about this one person, right? We're called to share the gospel, make sure they know it, and move on. And now if our path brings us back to that person, we share the gospel again, and we keep on, and we keep on, and we keep on. We keep sowing that seed. It continues on. Not only does he call them, not only does he send them, but I think as you're reading today in chapter 10, you probably hated the next couple passages. Basically saying that persecution will come, right? It's going to come. Behold, I am sending you out as sheep amidst the wolves, right? Jesus is giving a free and honest warning, not only to his disciples, he's giving it to us. People hated him, they are going to hate us. It's just the simple fact. And so he goes on, but notice in verse 18, it says, you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake. Now, this is interesting because here Jesus is telling them, you're going to get recognition. The kings and the governors and the elite, they're going to hear what you're saying. They're not going to like what you're saying, but they're going to hear you, and they're going to bring you before their courts, right? You're going to be able to be put in high places for the gospel, not for good reason. It's going to be bad reason, but you're going to be able to share the gospel with some of the most elite people. He continues on. He says, when you deliver you over, do not be anxious about how you speak. don't worry about what you're going to say, because what it says, you will be given to you at that hour. For it is not you who speaks, but it is through the Spirit of the Father. And this is so true today. You wouldn't believe how many people in my life who said, hey, Pastor, I can't really share the gospel because I don't know what to say. What if they ask a question that I don't know? Matthew chapter 10. It's not you who speaks. It is the Spirit. If God is telling you to share the gospel with somebody, the Spirit will give you the words to say. Do you have to have a bunch of seminary degrees on the wall? Absolutely not. Do you need to know all these things? Absolutely not. You are the Spirit who, you have the Spirit within you who can give you what to say. And as you continue to read through all these things, there's going to be persecution. What's his next words? To have no fear. So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will be known. You're not going to know everything. They don't know everything. But what God is promising to these disciples is that they should have no fear. And even if people try to cover up their message, if people try to cover up what they're doing, if people try to cover up them sharing the gospel, at the end of the day, when Jesus comes back at the second coming, everything will be known. We will all stand before God. Matthew says we will all stand before God naked, and just saying that we have nothing to hide. God knows everything, and that he will see that. And so when we read these, this chapter is really not, it's not a super comforting passage to us. But many people read this as it was history, and it is history, and Jesus was talking to his disciples, but these are the same words that are to be shared to me and to you. We are called by God. We are equipped by God. People are going to hate us because we are followers of God. Persecution is going to come, but we are to have no fear, and that we are to do God's will, and he will give us what to say. He will protect us, and at the end of the day, he will resurrect us to him and bring us into full glory. That's what Matthew chapter 10 is about. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this. We have finished the first 2 weeks. We are a third of the way there, and I'm so excited you guys are doing this, and I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope that God is illuminating something new as you're reading these 10 chapters again. Guys, God bless. We'll see you on day 11 next week.